Welcome to the Monday Motivation Spotlight, another episode featuring an inspiring person and story. Today we have a special Yom Hashoah or Holocaust Memorial episode where we are featuring someone with her mother's story. So welcome to our guest today, who is going to be sharing the fascinating story of her mother, Tzila Zakheim, who was born in 1922 in Mir. Eileen, thank you so much for being our guest today. I know that you travel telling your mother's story and that of the other heroes involved. So please share with us this very special story of your mother as you would like to share it.
Hi, Lesley and everyone. Thank you for joining. And thank you, Lesley, for inviting me to tell my mother's story. The legacy my mother, Tzila Zakheim, left us, her 3 children, was never to forget the Shoah and pass this on to the future generations. And I am here to tell her story and the story of heroes, Jews and non-Jews, who helped her survive the war. As Lesley said, my mother was born in Mir in 1922. She had 6 siblings. Most of them went to South Africa except 2. She was from a second marriage. Her mother died in 1937. The shtetl Mir, there was a population of 3,000 Jews before the war. Let me tell you a little bit about Mir. Even though it was a little shtetl with only 3,000 Jews, it was I think as any shtetl in Poland, Belarus, and Lithuania, was very vibrant, the Jewish life. There was the famous Mir Yeshiva. There was the Talmud Torah. There were all the different youth movements. My mother and her family went to Hashomerat Zair. There were all different kinds of shuls. They had a hot shul and a cold shul and a Chabad shul and all kinds of shuls. And my mother always used to say, Jews, they were always arguing, politics, everything. There was an acting group, the very cultural acting group. My late aunt Fagel Kopelowicz, who lived in South Africa afterwards, was a famous actress in South Africa. And so it was a very vibrant Jewish community. On Friday, the 2nd of June, 1941, the Germans arrived into the town. And as she told us, they marched in with trucks and lorries. She called them lorries, and they were marching. And they said, "Das is a blitzkrieg. This is a quick war. We're first going to get to Leningrad," I think she said, "and then we're going to get to Moscow. And within 5 weeks, the war is over." And another thing, they were singing Deutschland über alles with their hand up. And that was on Friday, the 2nd of June. All the Jews were then moved into a certain area. They weren't allowed to live amongst the non-Jews. So they moved into a certain area. I think it was 2 streets. And my mother's street, Zabalnagas, that was one of the streets. So a lot of neighbors and everyone moved in with them. It was a tiny house. But she said there was about 15 to 20 people in the house. Who remained there, besides the ones who went to South Africa, was my grandfather, her 2 brothers, Mendel and Michal. And I think Michal's wife, although she never mentioned it, I know there was a wife, Rachel. I'm not sure she was there. Now, I don't know if you know what the Judenrat is. The Judenrat was a Jewish council, and they were responsible for carrying out all the orders from the Germans. Example, when the Germans had killed Russian partisans or whatever they were, it was the job of the Jews to bury them. There were rations of bread portions, 120 grams, I think, a day per person. Their job was to send out workers to work and also to report any missing people from the ghetto. They were the connection between the police and the Gestapo. I'll get that further to that later on. What happened when they first arrived? They had to wear patches. She said it started off with a white patch, and then that wasn't good enough. They had to put a yellow patch on the left side. That wasn't good enough. They had to make a Magen David and put one in the front and on the back. And obviously the Jews had to find the material and everything. They weren't allowed to walk on the sidewalks. They had to walk in the street. And they also were sent to clean offices and houses, to sweep the streets, etc., etc. And also what she does remember at that stage, the relationship with the non-Jews and the Jews was perfect. But after that, she said she remembers little boys running around with sticks and shouting, Yud kaput, which means the end of the Jews. And it happened to her many times also.
straight away the first week, they hang up placards that the Jews must live not together with the Christians, separate place. And then they said that the Jews must wear a white band on the left hand with a yellow Magen David, and not allowed to walk on the pavement, only in the middle of the street. And here everybody, Sheiges used to come with a stick, Yud Kapud.
On Sunday in November 1941, the 9th or 20th, I'm not sure, I can't remember, that was about 4 months after the Germans arrived in town. She woke up in the middle of the night to shooting, and there was a big panic in the house. There were 20 people. She looked around. All she heard was shooting, and they were telling people, Jews, to get out of the houses. And she ran to a friend, a neighbor, a couple that she used to buy milk from, Sonia and Ignat Yemelovitch. They were farmers, and they were not far from them, but at the end of the town, they had a farm, a small holding, vegetable fields and everything. And she ran there, and Yignal wasn't home, but Sonia sent her straight to the stable. And she said, hide there. And when my mother got there, there were 2 other boys. And from what she told me, there was also a woman, her sister, and her 4-year-old daughter. And they were lying in the hay while all the shooting was going out. This was around midnight. And in the middle of the night, she said my mother was actually very good with time. She'd never had a watch. I'd ask her what the time was, and she would never be maybe 15 minutes out. So she said about 2-3 o'clock in the morning, she heard the stable door opening, and she heard Sonia say, there's nothing here. And then the German said in German, I'll check. And he took a rake and he started checking. Wow. A miracle. They didn't find them. And this little girl, 4-year-old girl, kept quiet, which is an absolute miracle. So he said to her, there's nothing here. Sonia said, can I lock up? And she said, yeah. And the shooting was carrying on. And in the morning, I think the shooting carried on for about 18 hours or something. In the morning, again, the door opened and she was calling Tzila, but Tzila didn't answer because they were scared. And the boys, I don't know if Sonia knew the boys were not there. And then she heard Ignal's voice, and Sonia said to Ignal, I know that Tzila's here. And Ignal said to her, Tzila, don't be scared, come out. She came out and the rest of them came out, and they brought her food. And Ignal said, in the meantime, you all stay here. Later on, when I know what's going on, I'll go and check to see what's going on in the village. In Belarus, in those days, 1941, they didn't take them to concentration camps. They went into the forest and they dug mass graves and they murdered the Jews there. And Yignal said that the non-Jews were taken with shovels to go and prepare the graves. And that's why he wasn't there. Anyway, later in the afternoon, he went and he came back. And he actually said he was crying because he was walking in the street and there was blood all over. It was November, so there was also the snow, and she said it was terrible. And the people were screaming and were in shock. He went to my grandfather's house to say that Tzila was alive. Mendel, her older brother, was alive, but her younger brother, who was born in 1925, he was shot in the street running. So that was the news he had to tell her. As I said, there were almost 3,000 people in the town. After that night, 850 were left. That means that 2,150 Jews were massacred in this little village, as in many other villages. Then after that, they were sent to the main ghetto, which was a dilapidated, rat-infested, massive castle, which belonged to the Count Bielski, which hadn't been lived in for centuries. And they were all sent there to live, the 850 of them. And of course, there was a Judenrand and everything. And they went out, and one of the jobs was to send the Jews to work. And Sonia and Ignal took my mother to work in the fields, and they were very good to her, and they fed her. And at night, the ghetto had the Jamek, the castle, had gates, massive gates, and at night they were locked. And at night they would be locked. let me put my mother Tzila aside now, and I'm going to another story about a young Jewish man whose name was Oswald Rufeisin. He was born on the border of Germany and Poland to a Jewish family, a Zionistic family, him and his brother, and he was my mother's age. They never spoke Yiddish at home. The language was German and Polish. Anyway, there was a youth movement called Akiva. And before the war, him and his brother, who was 16 at the time, was sent to Vilna to work on the kibbutz, like a hachshara, getting ready to go to Israel, to Palestine. And obviously, you had to get a certificate. His brother, because he was younger, was lucky enough to get the certificate, and Oswald didn't. His Hebrew name was Shmuel. And he remained in Vilna, and the war broke out, and he was in a ghetto. He never looked Jewish. He never spoke Yiddish. And he landed up one day walking in the street. I don't know if he had the star on or not, and a farmer stopped in his wagon and said to him, "Are you maybe looking for work? I need work." And they went out of the town, and he said there were a lot of workers there. He said, I actually knew him. He said that he thinks that people might have suspected that he was Jewish. Don't forget, he was circumcised, and you have to go to the public baths. It wasn't easy. He said to me he was an actor, and he started working in the field at the farmer's house, and he became friendly with the vet because he worked not in the house, in the fields. He worked with the cattle. And the farmer said to him one day, "You look very sad. What's the problem?" He said he just burst out crying, and he said, "I'm actually a Jew." So the vet said to him, "Listen, there's nothing for you to do here. Make your way to Belarus." And he said, "I've got a brother who lives in Tourette's. He's a peasant. He was a real peasant, but I'm going to give you a letter." So he started walking to Tourette's. And when the brother didn't really know what was going on, "How do I know you're not a Jew?" But he says, "I guess my brother's an educated man, so you can live with us." He said they were very poor in a hovel. And also there he started working, and people liked him. And when they needed translators, he would come to translate. What I didn't explain to you is I just want to tell you about the hierarchy of the Gestapo and the police. The Gestapo, there were about 7, 8 high-ranking officers. The main one, his name was Heinrich Hein, and he had 4 or 5 under him, besides regular soldiers. And then there was the Belarusian police. And the man in charge of the Belarusian police, his name was Simeon Serafimovich. My mother described him, as so did Oswald, as a very handsome man, a very clever man, a very violent man, and a drunk. And he was the chief of the police. Now, his area, the area of Mir, the headquarters was in Baranovich, which is 50 kilometers away, and they were responsible for a few Stetlach villages. And this Serafimovich came to Tourette's, and he couldn't speak Polish, so they called Oswald, and he was highly impressed with him. He said, "I need an interpreter. Come back to Mir with me." And he said, "If you want in the morning, I'm going." And Oswald went back and he said, "How can I go work for my enemy?" And he took it upon himself, "If anything, then I will work to try and save Jews." He actually said to me, "I will try and save anyone." That's what he told me. Anyway, he came to Mir and he worked himself up. And Hein, the Gestapo chief, took a great liking to him. Oswald actually said in his book, maybe because he reminded him of his son. And Oswald was an intellectual, and he was also, so they had a lot in common. And he started working for him. And there also, the police, they were suspicious of him. But he worked himself up, and he really became second on command to Hein. And all this time, he was trying to work out how to make contact with the Jews in the ghetto. And one day, he saw a guy by the name of Bereshka Dov Reznik, who was with him in Akiva, in the kibbutz in Vilna, and he recognized him. And he called him, and this boy he was in a uniform already, and he had a horse and a whip and a gun. And let me just quickly tell you that my mother always said they used to whip them when they were in the streets. And he used to say, "Don't be scared of me." And she used to say, they always used to say, "He's such a good guy." Anyway, and he said to Dov, "Don't you recognize me? I'm Oswald Rufeisin, Shmuel. We were together." And then he said, look, I want to try and help you as much as I can, but only a few people must know that I'm a Jew, and tell me what you want. And these young boys, they were also 20, 22, they wanted ammunition because they wanted to start an uprising. And it went like that. He started helping them. He would either go into the ghetto with a gun and come out with nothing, or the workers, like I met when I was in Mir in 1992. I met a woman who was I was getting off the bus, and she said to me, where's Oswald? Where's Oswald? So I said, he's coming. Who are you? She said she was one of the cleaners, a Jewish woman, in the offices. And he used to give her things and she'd hide it under the skirt. And that's how they used to get. He got quite a lot into the ghetto.
That is incredible that he was
And
there
he was
under the pretense that he was not a Jew.
He was wearing a Nazi uniform as an interpreter. And the Judenrat knew that Oswald was helping, but they didn't know he was a Jew, which I think would have helped things, because he used to tell, because he was so powerful, he knew what was going to happen in the other villages when there was going to be a massacre. And he would tell these boys, Dov, and Dov would go to Judenrat and say this, send a message, and quite a few people were saved like that. He really did. Anyway, one day Oswald is sitting in the office. He walks into the office. He shared an office with Hein. And why he could get all the ammunition was because they had a big cupboard there. And that's how he used to take it out. They obviously weren't very organized how to check. But anyway, but he trusted him. And the one day he walks in and he hears Heinz saying in German, yes, jawohl, 13th of August. He puts down the phone, and he was talking to the headquarters in Baranovich, by the way, where my father comes from, my late father comes from. And he said to Oswald, you are the only one that knows. On the 13th of August, the liquidation of the ghetto will take place. The town will be Judenrein.
Wow.
Now, Oswald quickly made it. He called Beruchka and he said, there's no time for an uprising. On the Saturday night of the 9th of August, he was so powerful. He says, I'm going to tell them that there are Russian partisans around in the next villages, and we're going to go and catch them. And he says, I'll take all the police and everything. And he said, I'm going to leave the gate open. And whoever can, just run into the forest. Now, listen, these young guys, in the way they didn't tell everyone because they wanted young people. But they did tell the Judenrat, and this one didn't believe them. The Judenrat at that stage the head of it was Rabbi Schulman. He was rabbi of the town, and also a whole lot of other people. And one of them was Eliezer Breslin, who was a good friend of my family. He lived in Rishon, but he used to come to Cape Town a lot. So I knew him also. And he was also on the Judenrat. And the boys told them, and they went, him and Laser and Schulman, the rabbi, went to Hein with watches and that. They used to try and bribe, like they used to bribe the mayor a fortune, but it didn't work. And they went to Hein, and Hein said to him, it's irreversible, there's nothing I can do. And the rabbi gave him the watches, and he took it, he turned it back. He said, I'm not taking anything, and there's nothing that I can do about it. And the Rabbi Schulman said to him, can you just make sure that it will be a humane death?
Wow.
So my mother, on the Shabbat morning, the castle in the middle was this huge courtyard. She knew nothing about it. She went downstairs into this courtyard, and people are whispering and talking, and how are we going to go into the forest, how are we going to sleep, how are we going to eat, And she had decided with a few young people that she's going to run. Her father, her other brother also did, but I don't know, she never mentioned that. Her father said to her, don't listen who's worried what they're going to do in the forest, and they won't have a blanket and they won't have a cushion. You go. If you can try and save yourself, run. But the only thing is, she claimed that the gate wasn't open. So she jumped out of the window. And a few of them started running. And she really knew the town and she knew the forest well.
At that time, too, she knew she was going to be separated from her father.
Yeah, but he gave his blessing. And her brother also managed to escape.
Yeah.
And he gave the blessing. Like the Rabbi Schulman said, I'm not going because I've got a wife and family. But he did that morning, he said to people, whoever can go, he called a fast day on the Sunday or something to hope for the best. And that night, she ran and she lost her friends. Her idea was to get to the outskirts of the town and to go to friends, her non-Jewish friends who would give her food, but she got lost.
From Sunday until Thursday, I never had food. And he told me, run to my field. I know where is his field. In the house, he was scared to keep me. Even in the stable, he was scared then to keep me. So he says, run to my field. I knew where is the field because I've been working there. One boy saw me, a neighbor saw me running. It was already nearly the daytime, but he never caught me. He didn't caught me. It's a neighbor. And I went in the field and I thought to then I heard, about, it was 8 o'clock already, 9 o'clock, I heard already they're killing the Jews. And then I thought to myself, when I'll be alive until night, I'll run away. I know already the way how to run. I'll go to the forest.
But then she saw Sonia and Ignat Yemelovitch, those non-Jewish, the farmers, the house. She knocked on the door and they didn't recognize her because she was wild. She was dirty. And they took her straight away to the back to the potato fields. And they said, just lie here. And they brought her to drink. And she even said that Ignat brought her water. And she just grabbed it and started drinking. And he was crying with her. He said, be careful, you haven't eaten and drunk. Slowly, she said, I was like a wild horse. And she also described her dress as being, she ran out with a white dress that was grey. My mother had a bit of a sense of humor. And then he said, I'm going to tell Sonia to make you latkelach. Sonia must have been a real Yiddish mama. And they were there. And another thing is that her knees were infected because obviously she'd been running on the ground a lot. And Sonia took cabbage leaves and she cured her. And while she was there, that was really the 13th of August, they heard the shooting. And the ghetto was liquidated except for 4 girls who were hiding in the basement, and they managed to survive. And she realized that I can't stay here anymore. It's not fair on them. And she thought maybe she'll go further into the forest and to see if she can find her brother. So Sonia said to her, listen, you can't go like this. You've got old broken boots. She took her and she gave her a new dress and clothes and boots. She gave her boots. And she said, in 3 weeks' time, at 12 o'clock at night, on Sunday night, come to this window and knock, and I'll have everything ready. And they sent her on the way. They were amazing people. And
it was also very brave of her, though, actually staying. Instead of saying to herself, I can't stay here, instead of just staying there and hiding in some kind of security,
she
to actually
go
out into the forest and not know what awaited her.
Like the one woman, she said, a woman and 2 daughters said to her, where are you going to go? You don't know. Yeah, at least we know what we've got.
Alina, I just want to pause for one moment in the story and just say, when you were talking about running in the forest and everything, just scenes went through my mind of October 7th and people just running in the fields and the running. And I know we're not talking about October 7th here, but so many people have compared the story of the Holocaust to October 7th.
Yeah. The truth is, I also thought of that on October 7th. Anyway, she managed to find her brother. She, in her interview, she said that she was out with friends. She told me a different story. And she managed to find her brother. What happened was those survivors, they would be about 4 or 5. They would dig a big hole. And during the day, because don't forget, they weren't only on the run from the Germans, they were on the run from the Russian partisans, the Polish partisans. Not everyone liked the Jews. And at that stage, they weren't partisans. They didn't have arms, nothing, except those young boys who ran away, which is a different story. And at night, they would go out to the neighboring villages, to the area of Mir, on the outskirts, to people, and they would barter with a bit of money, a bit of whatever they had. And then she went back to Sonia 3 weeks later, knocked on the door, and this young boy, the neighbor, Paulus, he saw her. And she went, and Sonia took her straight to the back, gave her the clothes and the boots. She made them boots and money and whatever. And she said, I've got a problem. Paulus was, we're going to both be in trouble now, because don't forget, posters were all over the town, whoever helps Jews. So Sonia says, don't worry, I'll deal with him, which was the case. She used to go around, and one day she was with Sonia and she heard shooting, and Sonia put her in the fields. And the next day when she went to their hideout, her brother, his wife, and a few of the other people were murdered. And the people in the next bunker hideout said that they were murdered. They were Polish Potters, and they robbed them. And that's why they were murdered. They then realized there was nothing much to do for her in that area. And she decided with friends that they have to go. They'd heard about the Bielski family camp. Have you heard of the Bielski family camp? But I just want to tell you what happened with Oswald. On the 14th, in the morning of the 14th, Oswald walks into the office and everything's quiet and normal, and Heinz working at his desk. So he thought, great, I'm going to survive this. And then someone walked in, one of the policemen, and he said, listen, Jews escaped. So Heinz said, how many? So he said, he didn't say, he said 180 stickers, pieces, not like people, 180, about that amount, he said. He says, oh, never mind, in other villages it was worse. And then they carried on working, and then all of a sudden he was called out, Hein, and he saw him talking to a Jewish guy, a man who was, his name was Stanislavski. He wasn't from Mir, but they came from all and landed up in the ghetto. And he couldn't understand, why is he not calling me? And then the other chief of police came, and he couldn't understand all this. Eventually, Hein walked in and he said to him, listen, Oswald, this Jew says that you helped them. So Oswald said, that's true. So apparently he went crazy. He said, but why would you admit it? I understand that you're a Pole and you feel bad for your people, what's happening to the Polish people. But why did you not say no? Because I would believe you. I wouldn't believe that Jew. He said, I don't know what to do with you now. I have to arrest you. Didn't kill him straight away. And he put him under arrest, and it was a day or two, and he called one of the guards to come and be with him, and he said, it was August, he said, give him a coat. And the guard was with him, and he went out for a second, and Oswald saw a window, and he jumped out of the window and he ran away. Wow. And they started shooting after him, but he managed to escape. He was running and running, and eventually he landed up in a nunnery. A nunnery? Yeah, it was actually right next to the police station, and he knew the nuns well. And there were 2-3 of them there, and the one nun didn't want to let him in, but the Mother Superior, she said, let him in. And he remained there. He remained there, and he had his little hiding place behind a cupboard or something, because the Germans, they always used to come to the nunnery. So he used to help them in the garden. He had his little room in the top, and there were 2 things he learned there. He learned how to knit, and he started reading the New Testament. And it interested him. Anyway, so let's put him aside now, and let's get back to Tzila. My mother, I know that her brother, she said he was killed around Pesach time. So we're talking about 1943. So from 1942, of August 1942 till 1943, Pesach, April, they were in that part of the area. Now she's making her way to Bielski. If you ever heard of the Bielskis, they're amazing people. If anyone's ever seen the movie Defiance, or afterwards I can give you names of books about Oswald Rufeisin and also the Bielskis, because they were amazing people. There were 3 brothers, Tuvia, Zus, and Asael. It's the greatest story of heroism during the Shoah. They saved 1,230 Jews who joined them in the Belarusian forest in 1941 to 1945. I remember my mother telling me that once they were crossing a river, and she was holding onto a horse's tail, and she started laughing, and she couldn't stop laughing. And I think that was the time of the operation. There were quite a few operations. They had to move a few times. And eventually they got to their final place in the Nolaboki forest, which was about 40 kilometers from Mir. And it became known by that time, the three Bielski brothers were fighters. They'd been in the Polish army, but Tuvia very much believed he wanted a place for women and children. And he said, we'd rather live freely in the forest than be killed, hunted. And he built an amazing place there. By that time, the Russians had arrived and they started working with the Russians. And this became, it was called the Jerusalem of the forest, because they had everything there. They had a tannery, they had a watchmaker, they would make ammunition. They got animals, they had to go barter and sometimes kill to feed 1,230 people. And my mother worked in the baths there. She was a fighter. So she said everyone had a shower once a week, but she was lucky, her and another girl, the rabbi's daughter, I think, they used to have a shower every day. And that was until 19, so they lived there. She said they felt free. She wasn't scared. It was cold. They were hungry. My mother had a beautiful voice. And one of the cousins there taught her Kol Nidre. And she used to laugh and say, when it's cold outside, your voice is very clear. She sang beautifully. And they used to sit around the fire. What they did do, they built for the winter, it was called Jablanka underground. It was a dugout. And that's how they lived until 1944, I think, that the Russian general came and she said to us, and she told me in Russian what he said, you are now on a free earth. You are free to go.
We are already now on the big free earth. You're all free already. We all start crying because we knew that everybody is one. All the people got killed. They had a radio. We knew what is going on. And they heard that it's already free. Belarus is free already. But if the Russian front went still to Poland, only our place was free already.
All 1,230 people marched to the nearest village, which was a town which was called Novogrodic. It was quite a walk, but they got there. And in Bielski's book, they even said that when they were walking past the non-Jews, they couldn't believe that these people are still alive, so many of them. And they got to Novogrodic, and Bielski gave a speech, and he gave them a certificate, and each one had to go on their own way. There were 4 or 5 of them, quite a few of them from Mir, and they had to make their way to Mir, which was another story. They got to Mir. My mother came to her house. She knew that her father had told one of the neighbors, you can keep the house. When I get back, give it back to me. She walked into the house and was full of non-Jews. And the woman said to her, this is the balabosta. This is the woman of the house. But my mother got such a fright, she ran to Sonia. So they sat the whole night talking and crying. And Sonia said, I'm going to go with you. You have to go back to your house. It's yours. She went back and she said the woman was very nice. She gave me a blanket and she gave me a cushion and she let me sleep with the daughter in the same bed. It was her house, and then she went to work, but most of the time she spent with Sonia. And if you remember the name Paulus of the boy that saw her, so Sonia said to her, remember Paulus? She said, yes. She says, he never told on you, we're going to make him a party. So my mother says, I don't have money. So Sonia says, don't worry. So they called him in, and he kissed her, and she said, I thought you would tell on me. He said, I would never have done that. And a few of the youngsters decided there's nothing left for them to do in Mir. They must make their way to the American zone. So she went to Sonia and Ignat, and she said, look, it's my house. I need you to help me sell the house. And Ignat said to her, you need Russian gold. You've got a long way to go. And he sold the house for her. And she wanted to give him a commission. And he said, no, you've got a long way to go. You take the money. He took her and a few of her friends to the station. And they started, their first stop was in Poland, which she said was terrible. She said they were warned, don't speak Yiddish in the streets because they will kill you. She said it was awful there. Then they went to Czechoslovakia. Eventually they got to the American zone. And in the American zone, they were in the DP camps. She was in Munich in a place called Landsberg am Blech, and they remained there. Her intention was to get to Palestine. Most of them, Palestine, Canada, Australia, no one wanted them. No one actually wanted them. And this is quite interesting. She had for the South Africans especially, there was a woman from the joint, they went to the joint, was running the place, and they were comfortable and clean, and she worked in a shop there. And there was a woman from the joint, a South African named Hannah Kish, who happened to have been a friend of my aunt's or something, and she took my mother under her wing. And I didn't know this. My mother never told us, but I was always a very inquisitive child. And I saw that my mother never wanted to become a South African. Her family in South Africa, Breslin, this Laser Breslin from the Judenrat, he sent a telegram to his brother in Rishon LeZion, who said that they're alive and Tzila is the only one who survived. This telegram was sent to my aunt, her family in South Africa, half brothers and sisters. And they started to try and get the business going. And what happened was that, and I only discovered this 2 years ago, that they couldn't get into South Africa. She couldn't get into, because people asked me, how did she get into South Africa? I said, I don't know. I guess she had a fictitious marriage. I don't know, because I have a very good friend who does genealogy. And she said there's no ways she would have she went in as Kopelowicz, because I got all kinds of, from the Red Cross, I got all kinds of things about my mother when she arrived in Germany. And it was written there that she was single, but widowed, and we couldn't work this out. I remember as a child, because my mother never wanted to become a South African, she was stateless. And once I saw this passport, and I didn't know, but I saw in the middle of her name, there was Elias. And I was a little girl, but that name stuck in my head. And when someone asked me this question, I said, maybe. But no one seemed to have known, none of the family, my brother, my cousins who were much older than me. And then I looked up, I remember my parents got married in the Germiston Shul. And there in the middle was the name Elias. And I couldn't find him. So my friend said to me, listen, maybe she got married in the forest. They had forest wives. And then by chance, I saw someone on Facebook by the name Tanya Elias. And I wrote to her, I said, look, in South Africa. And I said, it's probably a needle in the haystack. She said, why don't you speak to my aunt who lives in Durban? And I phoned this woman. And I said, it's probably a needle in the haystack. She said, no, it was my brother. He married her. He was a soldier in the South African army with his father, and he was stationed somewhere in Italy, and they were also looking for Jews. And the joint must have got them together, and he married her. And she said to me that her brother's name was Morris Elias. His Hebrew name was Moshe Aaron Elias, but the actual surname was Eliashiv, the Rav Eliashiv. It's a great uncle. So I phoned my friend. In 2 seconds, she found the certificate, the marriage certificate. And that's how she got to South Africa. And so he married her by proxy, but obviously the minute she arrived in South Africa, they had to get married. And then they got divorced, and then she married my father.
So she never spoke about this, right? She
She
never spoke
told
about
me.
this to you.
You know what, there are a lot of things. I don't know why. Anyway, I had contact with his son, phoned me, and it was quite something. So what happened with Oswald Rufeisin? Oswald, he did go into the forest. He never fought, and he wanted to be, and the boys said to him, he said, okay, we're going to go make our way to Palestine. He said, no, I want to become a monk, and I'm going to go with the nuns. So they said, forget about the nuns. Hey, thank you very much. But he said, no, but we will meet in Israel. He was a great Zionist. And he did. He became a monk with the Carmelite monastery. His brother was already many years living in Haifa. And in 1959, he arrived in Israel. So a great welcome by all these people. I have an article, if you ever want to see it, from the Ma'ariv from those days. And he wanted in his Teudat Zehut to say that he was a Jew. But he wasn't really a Jew. He was born a Jew. And if anyone knows the story about who is the Jew, that's Oswald Rufeisin, Father Daniel. And his book, there's a book about him. The heading of the book's called In the Lion's Den, because he said I was like Daniel in the Lion's Den. And how did I get involved? I grew up knowing all the stories about my mother. And my mother always, when I came in Aliyah, why don't you phone Oswald? I don't know why she never did, because all her friends were here. And I went to see the documentary Shoah. I'm talking about 1984, 85. And I thought, wow, this is true, the snow and the trees, because before that, it was just like part of my life, the stories. And I came back and I phoned the Stella Maris convent, because I knew he was there, the monastery. It's in Haifa. And I said to him, can I please speak to Father Daniel? And he came to the phone. So I said, my brother and I would like to come to Haifa to meet you. He says, where do you live? I said, I live in Efrat in Gush Etzion. He says, I come there every week. I said, what are you doing there? He used to bring theological students to Beit Lechem and to the Herodian. So he says to me, wait at the post office there and we'll meet. And I thought, oh my goodness, he's going to come off with all his garb and the cross. The bus arrives and all these students are looking, and this little old man jumps off the bus and he started crying. And I said to him, why are you crying? He said, every time he meets a girl, a daughter, one of the girls, he said. Anyway, we started chatting, and he said, when your mother comes, I want to meet her. And he did a few times, and she had an amazing memory. So he often sent people to interview her, like for the book, for the television, and that's it. And my mother, I came in Aliyah in 1980. My father-in-law passed away my father in 1983. In 1992, my mother came to live in Israel, which was her dream. She lived with us. She died in 2003. And that's the story.
As a quick outline, there's a lot more. What I would like you to share with us, from what you sent me before this, you had this curiosity to meet Sonia, and you reintroduced your mother to Sonia, who had saved your mother's life. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Sonia reacted, and also how your mother reacted when she saw her for the first time.
Okay, so in 1992, she said to me that a lot of the survivors from Israel all over the world, because they were friends with her, are going to, it was the 50th anniversary of the termination of the Mir on the 12th of August of the ghetto. And she said they're going to do it, going to Mir. So I said to her, I want to go, and I'd like to go find Sonia. I grew up with Sonia. I remember, I don't know if anyone knows the area of Johannesburg, Bez Valley, Doornfontein. I grew up in Bez Valley. Every month I would go with my mother to the post office with a box, and in the box was cigarettes, fruit, and all that kind of thing, and it would be sent to Sonia until 1962, and then it stopped. And we grew up on the stories and the pictures and everything. And I went. She didn't want to go. I went, which was quite an amazing experience. And the reason why they all wanted to go, the survivors, and it was the first time. And I was scared because I thought they're going back to trauma. The graves, the mass graves, it didn't have anything written about Jews. It was a plaque about Belarusians killed here, and the star, the red star. So the guys in Israel, they made plaques, they brought everything. And with the agreement with the mayor, the survivors came from Canada, from all over. And at each place they would say Kaddish, and on the 13th of August there was a very big Haskara. And I didn't manage to meet Sonia that time because her husband had died and she went to live with her daughter in Sologorsk. But I was with this group and they had to follow wherever they went. But one of my mother's friends who left me in 1959, he was staying on. So he went, I gave him money, and he made acquainted with my mother. And they started writing and talking. And the first question my mother said to her, why did you stop writing to me? So she told her that her neighbor's husband worked for the KGB, and he warned her to stop all contact with South Africa. And that is what happened. So in 1992, that contact was renewed. They used to speak on the phone. They'd write. I've got a lot of her letters. And she actually wrote an article in the local newspaper because she was sick and she needed medicine, and my husband's a doctor until we got the medicine, and she claims it saved her and our son-in-law. So she wrote this amazing article. And we made her and her husband are right Gentiles. And the most amazing thing that I can tell you is, I think it was 2017 or something. It was also the anniversary, one of the anniversaries of the Mir ghetto. And today the ghetto is recognized by UNESCO. It's been renovated and it's a very famous site in Belarus about all the Belarusian lifestyle, but they have dedicated one floor to the Jews of Mir. And I got an invitation, but I didn't think of going, which I'm sorry. And then the woman sends me pictures, and I see my mother's picture looking at Sonia's name at Har Herzl, at Yad Vashem,
Yad
and
Vashem.
Sonia's daughter talking. And apparently her family, her daughter was old already, but her grandchildren came to tell the story of Sonia, Ignat, and Tzila. And they donated from Yad Vashem the certificate and the medallion to the museum.
Yes.
One of the first people that sent me a message was Sonia's grandchild.
Really, that's incredible.
Right
Once
about it.
again, that similarity.
I sent her once my presentation 2 years ago, and she said, it's Easter, the whole family's coming. We're going to look at the pictures and we're going to talk about Sonia. So that's an amazing thing. The way we haven't forgotten, neither have they.
Absolutely. So did your mother ever get to see her again face to face, or was more
didn't want to go.
communication by
I
letters?
wanted to go. We wanted to bring Sonia and her daughter, but she was too sick, and my mother refused to go. My mother, I think she was scared to go back. My brother always said she was scared of the KGB. I regret that I didn't go. But then in 1998, that was the last time the survivors were going, and I took my whole family. I have 4 children. My son was just before the army. He was in a trick. My 2 daughters, and my little boy was 11. And my cousin came, my sister came, and my cousin from Argentina. And we went on this tour, and I took them to meet Sonia. So my children met her. There's a lot of stories.
I must say, I have goosebumps when you say that, because that is just the most phenomenal thing for them to meet the woman that saved your mother, their grandmother.
Yeah.
How did you feel the first time that you saw Sonia in person?
In 1998.
Yeah, and how was the feeling? I'm sure it was very emotional.
I speak Yiddish, so I took a translator because I don't speak Russian, and it was quite amazing. And we were chatting, and she was holding me and kissing me. My sister had met her also because I wasn't there. I'd already left. We went early. And I said to her, Sonia, why did you do it? Why did you endanger yourself? She said, we never thought not to do it. But she said it never entered her mind not to, and her husband. They were amazing people.
Wow, that's incredible.
Amazing people. And that's what my mother always said. She said in Mir, when she came back, she was very well treated. Not like she always, I don't know if you know the history about Kielce in Poland, when the Jews came back there. I think 40 of them were murdered. And she said in Belarus, and when I went back in 1992, her whole street wasn't burned down. And all the neighbors had heard, they were still living there. The person, she sold her house to 2 spinster sisters. They were still living there. And when I went back in 1992, they'd all heard that Tzila's daughter's here. And this one came to tell me she was at school with them. It was quite a reunion for all the survivors. They only actually broke down at the Haskara, because before that, when they got off the bus, they were so excited about talking about their childhood. Do you remember this orchard? Remember this? A lot of them, their houses had been burnt down. My mother's house wasn't. The Mir Yeshiva today is a big post office. And by the way, Oswald Rufeisin came with us on the 1992 trip. He died just before. He was going to come in 1998, but he passed away.
And that must have also been fascinating, having him there on the trip and literally walking through everything that happened. It was amazing. I got to know him. And he was so concerned about me because I was one of the only ones who ate kosher. My Hebrew name is Chaya. Chayale. Chayale. He was a lovely person. A lovely person. Right. Wow. Incredible. I have one question for you, because your mother, going back to before this all started, she was around 19 years old. You're saying she was born in 1922. Correct. And you said when this all started in her area around 1941. Yeah. So she was already at the end of her teenage years, a young adult. If you ask her, I don't know if it ever came up in conversation, were there signs on the door, like any kind of signs that things were happening, warning signs, or did it all just happen? But yes, you said things happened. You're telling me, or if I read in one of the books, that people had arrived from other villages, but she said nothing. She had nothing. She went to a Polish school before she went to Talmud Torah, all her friends in the street. She said nothing. Yeah, Sonia was their friend. She personally never said anything. When I came there, they were all angels, but I don't know. But also there was another guy with us that was badly wounded in the forest. That's another story.
And he was there, and the partisans covered him with branches and that, and went to look for help. And they went to one of the non-Jews who was with them, and they took him back and they saved him. And the children, they remembered the story. There were a lot of good people. Can't say there weren't. Can't say there weren't. In my mother's case, Oswald, Sonia, the Bielskis saved her life.
Saved her life. Incredible.
I used to look at her and I say, how they used to jump out of trains. They never had passports to get to the German zone. She said, I was young. And she was just, she wanted to live.
But that's the whole thing. There's things that we do, God forbid, when we put in that situation to survive. And that's exactly what she did.
Yeah, she wanted to live.
Oh, and she did.
Yeah.
Sadly. Thank God she was able to live in Israel, to have a family, children, grandchildren.
Yeah. She loved Israel. She used to come here the whole time. But she lived here for 10 years. She loved it. Yeah.
Fabulous. Anything you would like to just share with us, parting words about your mother's story, the story of these heroes, the world that we're living in today?
There were two things that my mother always said to me. Don't forget the Shoah and don't forget Yiddish. So that's what happened. We grew up with, I especially and my brother, we grew up with the stories. Every Shabbat afternoon, all the pictures would come out. And when I got to Mir in 1992, I felt I knew it better than Johannesburg. I knew every nook and cranny. Because everyone was on Saturday night, all her brothers used to come and they'd talk about the Haim, the Mir. We grew up with it, and I wasn't traumatized by it because, I don't know, I wasn't traumatized. And I took it upon myself. Whoever asked me to speak, I tell the story.
To share her story. And that's not a given what you're saying, because there are so many Holocaust survivors, or no longer survivors, that they survived no longer alive, that didn't share their story, or only shared their story many years later, that their children didn't grow up with knowing exactly what was going on and what was happening. There was this mysterious thing about what was going on, that it wasn't all out in the open and to be shared with their family, which I think you were fortunate to have that as part of getting to know her.
I think she shared what she wanted us to know.
There's no doubt that she didn't share
everything. There's a lot
everything.
that I don't know, and after I found the man who married my mother, I decided I'm not going to start searching anymore. That's it. I closed the circle for her. By making Sonia and Ignat a righteous Gentile, which was amazing for her. And it wasn't such an easy thing to do. It wasn't easy through Yad Vashem, and it wasn't easy. And they had to interview Sonia, and we closed the circle. And I've got something to pass on to my grandchildren, my daughters. I hope will carry on the story. They will. And that's it.
Wow, absolutely. Thank you so much, Eileen Fridman.
Thank you so much for giving me the honor. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome for sharing the story, this fascinating story of your mother, the other heroes involved in the story too, and especially for being open-minded and taking this further and doing the fabulous things that you've been doing in terms of giving these people the respect that they deserve, righteous Gentiles, as well as sharing the story. You travel, you speak to a lot of people.
What I do is I like to speak to schools, and I like to speak to the teenagers.
Which is so important, because as the generations get younger, they're more removed from the Holocaust. Thank you so much, Eileen. Thank you to all of you.
Much, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you exactly to our listeners for listening to this fascinating story on the anniversary of Yom Hashoah, Holocaust Memorial Day. Thank you to our sponsors, Eggert & Cohen Insurance, as well as to Lali's Flower Boutique in Jerusalem. If you found this inspiring, if you'd like to hear more inspiring stories, we interview many people. Not all, of course, are Holocaust survivor stories, but business owners, nonprofits, and inspiring stories in Israel. Please do follow. Please hit the subscribe button. And I look forward to seeing you next week on the Monday Motivation Spotlight with another inspiring story. Have a good, safe day. Bye-bye.